What's up everyone, my name is RoyaleRebelle, and in this video I'm going over the Tools of Torment mid-chapter update, probably the most hated update to come to Dead by Daylight so far. And I say this because I have not seen the DBD community react so negatively to developer updates since they attempted to introduce instant mores and a base kit unbreakable. And I think it really says something when a community that rarely agrees on anything agrees so strongly on a potential update. Now normally I do these videos as they're announced, but some of these changes were so drastic I decided to wait until they got to the PTB before I said anything, because there are some serious changes they're doing for both survivors and killers with this update. But let's start off with the good part of the update. With this update, the developers are introducing improvements to the blood web. The devs have listened to players and have now introduced an option to autofill the blood web. There's a few different options for players on how they can navigate the blood web. Players can choose between a click or a hold when choosing nodes. This can be found under the player settings. Players can traverse the blood web through the traditional way by selecting each individual node. Players can have the blood web completely autofill each level. When doing so, the blood web prioritizes perks and rare items. And then you have the option of picking specific nodes within the blood web, and it'll traverse the quickest route to that node. It looks like this only becomes available after each character has prestige once, so you'll have to do the normal blood web at least once per character before getting the autofill feature. I think this is probably the best part of the announcement. I love that it will no longer take an eternity to get through the blood web. I have a feeling we'll start seeing a lot more higher prestige players because of this update, which will hopefully take away some of the stigma players have for high level players. Another good update coming is the visual terror radius. It is a huge accessibility win and I am here for it. Instead of having to rely just on an audio terror radius, players will have a visual heart that indicates how closely the killer is to you. When on the outer part of the terror radius, it looks like a red blob, and the closer the killer gets, the more it visually resembles a heart and the better you can see it beating. The devs also included options for players who may be colorblind, which I think is awesome. The devs have assured players that this will not provide a competitive advantage and respects any terror radius perks, add-ons, or powers. This is something I think players definitely needed. I know for myself personally, I have trouble processing audio, so having the option to know the killer's terror radius visually means I'll no longer be at a disadvantage compared to other players, so I'm excited for this change to come to the game. There was a map update to Auto Haven Wreckers, and I'm not too opinionated on this. I don't think they changed them in a way that gives either side an advantage, and the biggest growing pain is just going to be getting used to the new layout. But I should note, so far in the PTB, I've only spawned in Gas Haven, so I don't know how the changes to Blood Lodge feel. With the changes to killer perks, when I first read them, I felt like they had been nerfed a little too much. Call of the Brine and Overcharge both received significant drops in effectiveness, and I assumed this was to curb how heavy the gen regression meta currently is, but after playing the PTB and seeing the changes to survivors, I don't think they're as bad as I first assumed, especially with the changes to healing, because whatever time you would have lost on the generators is time that survivors are going to spend on healing. And then poor Billy is getting nerfed in this update. While the devs are making his overheat ability much more forgiving, they're nerfing his two most popular add-ons, the Doom and Death engravings, making them generate more heat, which negates the quote-unquote buff the devs gave to his ability and makes it so he doesn't get as much speed. In this update, survivors are seeing a lot of nerfs. Healing across the board is being nerfed along with Dead Hard and flashlights. Starting off with Dead Hard, the change coming to Dead Hard is that survivors will be unable to activate it unless they've unhooked another survivor. They must get an unhook per each use of Dead Hard. This is a change that definitely didn't need to happen. I mean, the fact that a ton of killer mains immediately came out with compilations of them waiting out the quote-unquote OP Dead Hard shows that even a decent number of killer mains saw this change as unnecessary. Especially when you consider connectivity issues in DBD, along with the small window to activate, it really wasn't that OP of a perk. But now players have a limited number of times they can activate this perk since there are only a limited number of hooks in the game, and even less considering healing has now been nerfed. I think if this perk absolutely needed changing, there's some other routes I would have taken. The best option I've heard so far is to have it activate after being in chase for so long. This would encourage killers to attempt to end chases faster, but also reward players who are at least somewhat competent loopers. Or if they really wanted to tie the perk to unhooking to encourage more altruistic playstyles, then I would make it so you just have to unhook once per match. That way altruism can be encouraged throughout the team. I think these would be better compromises between the proposed change and the current state of the perk. Now flashlights. In terms of flashlights, they have also been nerfed. Lightburn will no longer be in effect. This means killers whose powers could be cancelled with a flashlight will no longer have that happen. Survivors can no longer burn Wraith out of his cloak, Nurse out of her blink. Survivors can no longer burn the Artist's crows, and the Hag's traps can no longer be burned away. With the Hag's traps, however, survivors can now wipe them away, so they're not invincible. This is frustrating, because now it seems like flashlights are a very limited use item. But even in terms of blinding killers, the developers have tried to limit them in the past by proposing making killers invincible during locker grabs. Realistically, Realistically though, I don't think that this is a change that would affect the number of flashlights used in game, as most people bring them to attempt saves and not for pulling killers out of their abilities, especially since you don't know what killer you'll get before each match. And finally, the biggest part of this update, survivor healing. This part frustrates me the most as a primarily solo queue survivor, because if you know anything about solo queue, getting teammates to heal you is one of the hardest things to do. The changes to healing including adding an additional 8 seconds to base healing, bringing it to 24 seconds total, which will make perks like Thatanophobia and killers like Legion much more powerful. They've made it so that at base, all medkits can only heal you 1 health state, which will make perks like Slappy Butcher able to waste a medkit. With add-ons, a medkit at most can heal 2 health states, and the devs have also made Circle of Healing effectively useless. Circle of Healing no longer allows for self-heals within its radius, it only provides a healing bonus to altruistic healing, so there's no point going within its radius with a medkit. It does allow survivors to see the aura of injured survivors within the boon's range, but let's be honest, there are much better aura rating perks that don't limit the aura rating to a specific spot on the map. I think if any changes need to be made to Circle of Healing, take away the self-healing bonus, not the ability to self-heal. In its current state, you're better off running perks like Bond or Empathetic Connection if you want to see survivor auras, or Botany Knowledge if you want the healing bonus. And none of those perks require the time it takes to bless a boon and are not limited to a specific map area. This perk feels like it was changed because killers just don't want to use the direct counters for healing, such as Shattered Hope, which is a perk that was specifically made to counter boons, and Hex Pentimento, which makes it so survivors can't bless a totem along with the effects of a current Pentimento stack, which given the proposed changes to healing makes that perk even more powerful. But those are my thoughts on the biggest changes coming to the Tools of Torment mid-chapter update. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And for those interested in reading the patch notes in full, I'll leave a link to them in the description down below, along with the link to the PTB feedback forum. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more Dead by Daylight content.